And now to our first conversation. Nigeria is Canada's largest trading partner in Africa with $2.67 billion in bilateral merchandise trade, according to the Canadian Trade Commission. Canadian merchandise imports from Nigeria amounted to about $2.1 billion, with Canada's exports to Nigeria totaling $605.4 million. For more now, let's talk to CEO of Africa Canada Trade and Investment Ventures, Mr. Kenneth Oguzie, joining us right here in the studio. Great to have you join us.
A very good morning to you and a good morning to the viewers as well.
Yeah, so quite an interesting relationship there we have with Canada. I know we import most of our wheat, from there, but from your perspective, is the trade between Nigeria and Canada balanced?
I wouldn't say it's balanced because, of course, for a variety of reasons. But I think for me, one of the main focuses around the volume of trade. If you look at like Nigeria being pretty much like the largest economy in Africa, and of course, a global player doing 2.7 billion. Put that into context, looking at China doing 15 billion with Canada, and India doing about China doing 35, India doing about 15. Then obviously that tells you there's a huge gap there in terms of volume, which shouldn't be there. So I think the deficit is there, but the volume as well is something that we really need to look into. So I think the discussions really would focus on how can we ensure that we grow those volumes in terms of making it become more commensurate in terms of the size of the economy which we have in Nigeria. So a country like Canada should be doing more trade with Nigeria, obviously. Of course, we are the largest trading partner, with Canada and comprising to other African countries. But a 200 million people economy, largest black nation in the world, you would probably expect more.
So we need to see more.
Absolutely.
More
and that's what we always, bring up these conversations, and we always want to have these discussions.
All right, let's look at the opportunities there. What opportunities, are there, from a value chain, perspective, looking at that bilateral relationship?
I think there are a lot of things we can look into. So first of all, we have a growing ICT sector in Nigeria. So you talk about like fintech, you see the number of startups coming out of Nigeria, raising money on global markets and stuff. I think it's an opportunity for Canada to really work to partner with these startups. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of young people. If you look at the demographics in Canada, aging population, Nigeria, younger people. So why can't we sort of create avenues or platforms for engagement between startups in Canada as well as those here? Then renewable energy is another big thing too. Renewable energy in Canada, as we move towards this whole environmental, eco-friendly product, energy sources, Canada is probably, ahead, compared to a lot of countries like Nigeria. But I think that opens up opportunity for partnerships. It's not so much about, trade from Canada to Nigeria. I believe in partnerships, synergy. There are a lot of energy companies in Nigeria that can partner with energy companies in Canada, explore new ways of doing things, tailor it to our local reality. And then it's a win-win for both parties. So that's another area. But I mean, right now, if you look into some of the exports coming out of Nigeria to Canada, so you have things like, mineral oils, all these type of things, regular oil as well, cocoa, shea butter. There's still a lot to be done, in terms of how the government can promote or support small businesses, medium-sized enterprise to export more to Canada, because I think we do have a lot of strengths, but there's some challenges around this whole piece about manufacturing, production, which we need to sort out to really help us leverage that market and do better in terms of the numbers coming from this way to that way. So those are some of the, more common ones we can talk about, really.
And looking at, other issues, plaguing these parts of the world, the currency. Currencies is a big issue. How is that affecting, this trade?
Well, it is affected a lot because, as a business, you want to ensure that whatever you invest in or doing business with on the other side of the world, there are certain level of stability. So I call it making Nigeria a bit more investment attractive, economically attractive. So the fiscal policies need to be sorted out. We know how the whole currency is, doing up and down. So we just finished like a trade mission from Canada, brought them over to Nigeria recently. And I think one of the main discussions or concerns they had was around the fluctuating currency. So how do we help with some of these things? Things like ensuring that there's more exports. We boost the manufacturing industry so that it can help us in terms of generating the currency we need and really positioning our companies. So Other pieces around investment attraction. We need to have a more solid investment attraction policy. I know things like the Nigerian ambassador and his team in Canada, they're doing a lot of good job in terms of promoting Nigeria. But I think there needs to be room for more stakeholders to get involved and really help and tailor, personalize the message. You cannot use the same investment strategy or investment message, you're selling to the US or Germany for Canada, because it's a more conservative group. So you need to ensure that you understand the terrain, put out the message, and then that helps for people to really come on board and see what are the possibilities. So there's
more like
still some
tailored reach.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tailored reach. That's always my message. Tailor it, because every environment is different. Every sector is different. So tailor it to Canada and make Nigeria more investment attractive, business attractive country, and then we can see more inflows, or we can see more partnerships.
Because we actually do need a lot of inflow.
We do
right now. Let's look at these sectors, generally in Nigeria. Which ones are more will benefit more, from this relationship?
Well, I spoke about the renewable energy sector because that's one that I'm very passionate about personally, because I think environment is a big thing. You see how pollution and all of these pieces.
That's top on the agenda.
Oh, top on the agenda, from the UN and all the various multilateral organizations. It's always something priority. Some people might call it first world problems. They would say, oh, it doesn't matter. It's not something that affects us here. But look at things like the flooding and all of this. These are all tied to the environment. Look at things like mortality rates, life expectancy in Nigeria, 45 years. And we don't understand how things like the environment affects those things. Nigeria is vibrant. Nigeria has tons of opportunities. So if we can work together with some of the players in like those energy spaces, it can help us. Now look at the power sector too. Power sector is a big thing. Canada is looking to different forms of alternative sources of power. Nigeria is on that path right now, but I think there's a lot of work to be done. Let's utilize the technology out there, tailor it to us. It creates more opportunities for local companies. And then over time, we can actually teach Canada as well in terms of how to do things. Because I think we're very vibrant people. We are thinkers. But I think sometimes when you don't have the enabling environment, then you sort of hinder that mindset. So those are some of the things. But one thing I also need to mention is the brain drain piece around the education, which you and I understand, because we have all this. We're sending all these international students out there in Canada. Nigeria is probably one of the top 5 countries sending students to Canada. But I talk about we need to grow more partnerships. We need to create environments or situations where universities in Nigeria can partner universities in Canada, exchange programs, knowledge exchange, transfer. Both parties can leverage on it rather than just the one-way relationship which we have right now. So those are some of the core that I think the opportunities lie.
Quite interesting. But now let's look at the imports, from Nigeria, talking about Canada now. It's included mineral fuels and oils, cocoa, rubber, lead, basically unrefined, products. But what kind of conversations are being had, to get us to get more refined, products out there?
Absolutely. So you know how this works in terms of value chain. I strongly oppose having to always send raw materials, outside Nigeria. I think we should start looking to how do we add value before we send those things out, because otherwise you're missing out in terms of the benefits of import, or you're actually just limiting yourself. So I think if we have a more solid manufacturing sector in Nigeria where we can process these things, we have the manpower, we have the environment, we have everything. But I think it's just stakeholders really sitting down, looking at the big picture, engaging the right set of professionals, engaging the right set of organizations. Then we can say, okay, cocoa, instead of sending raw cocoa to all these countries where you then go process it, and then if some of it finds itself back into our shelves in Nigeria, how about we add more value in terms of this? If we have timber we want to export, finish up the timber, do more work, and send it over. So I think that's one of the key pieces that we need to work on, rather than just moving raw materials that way, because it doesn't...
Because that narrative has to change.
It has to change. It's not sustainable, really.
Such a long time. But tell us more about the bilateral agreements, between Canada and Nigeria.
Well, so the major one is the FIPA one, which is the Foreign Investment Protection Agreement, which is yet to be ratified for reasons which I don't know, because I think investors would, one of their biggest problems in terms of investing in many countries is about structure. Like they want to be sure their investment is protected. And these investments, no one has time to be going through litigation all the time, especially when you can see that the potentials are there. So I think I'm calling on stakeholders who are involved in terms of this ratification to ensure that we ratify like that agreement, the FIPA agreement. And then, of course, the new AFTA agreement as well, the free continental trade. The message we've been putting as an organization out there is to say, listen, Canadian companies, Nigeria will be the gateway into the African market. You know, it's a large economy, so you come in here, then you could play in the African market and think about what are some of the ways you can then partner with this organization. So the AFTA agreement, for sure, it's a game changer. It's very exciting for us in the trade and business industry because I think Africa now has pretty much the largest free trade zone globally. In terms of if you look at the 1.2 billion people market and the landscape which it covers. So stakeholders, we need to sort out the FIPA agreements, the foreign protection, and then, of course, really leverage on the new AFTA agreement as well.
And we see, you know, Ghana and Kenya already, you know, profiting from that agreement.
Absolutely.
They had their tea deal earlier this month. We're trying to see other African countries actually, you know, play. But thank you so much. That was Kenneth Oguzie, CEO, Africa-Canada Trade and Investment Ventures. We'll keep tracking that trade relationship.
Thank you very much, and great to be on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.